Here at Behind the Mask, we acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples are the original storytellers and custodians of the land on which we live and meet today. Behind the Mask is a podcast about sharing authentic stories. And in continuing that legacy of storytelling, we acknowledge that we're honouring and celebrating Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders' traditions, customs and stories. And we pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
I've sort of popularised all men should be icing their balls. And the reason for that is because male fertility is on a massive decline. And there's estimated that in 35 years, most men in the Western world will be infertile.
I think we just need to realise that there's beauty in everything. I look at a face that's got lines because, I'm kind of happy. I wish I didn't have so many wrinkles, but I've got laugh lines because I've been laughing for 55 years. I look at faces that tell stories.
Love yourself now instead of waiting. Because at least for me, there's a lot of parts that I love about myself, but then there are things behind the mask that I'm not so happy with.
A cosmetic surgeon in South Korea, and she said that it's becoming quite a thing for families to give their daughters a graduation gift, which is surgery. It's becoming so normal, and that they will often take transport home with all their bandages because they're quite proud of it.
I'm Josh Pitterman and welcome to Season 3 of the Behind the Mask podcast. This is set to be our most spicy, controversial and thought-provoking season yet. We'll be taking a dive into the esoteric, the taboo and some of the most pressing issues that profoundly affect us all. We'll hear from specialists in the areas of sex, war, business, psychedelics, homelessness, mental health and more. And as always, they'll open up with their heart stories as well as the tools and wisdoms they've used to find healing, inspiration, meaning and purpose in life. Get ready to be inspired once again by the depths of the human experience. It's time to go behind the mask. Between singing, writing, podcasting, presenting, coaching, gym, Pilates, yoga, breathwork, meditation, ice bath, saunas, staying well can feel like a full-time job. Thankfully, Wanderlust Mushroom Multis over here is a craft blend of 7 mushrooms, including organic reishi, turkey tail, and shiitake mushroom, rooted in traditional Chinese medicine. Reishi supports a healthy immune system and may help relieve coughs, while its antioxidant properties work to reduce free radicals. This hero mushroom is also used traditionally to help support vitality and replenish qi. With 1 capsule a day, it's a simple way to add functional mushrooms into your wellness routine. Clean and potent with minimal fillers, you can find Wanderlust Mushroom Multi at your local Chemist Warehouse or order it online now. Aging, it's the one journey we all share, the unavoidable unfolding of life. Yet, for many of us, we spend our lives avoiding it rather than embracing it, maybe even suppressing it rather than surrendering to it. Or maybe I've got it all wrong. On the other side of the equation, maybe we're in a societal shift. Biohacking and longevity science providing us with the tools not just to extend the quality of our life, but not just to extend the quantity of our life, but to improve the quality. Today, we're going behind the mask of aging with storyteller, journalist, co-host of the House of Wellness and co-author of How to Age Against the Machine, the wonderful Melissa Doyle.
Hey,
welcome.
Josh, thank you.
And joining her is biohacker and longevity expert and the founder of Boost Your Biology, Lucas Aoun.
Thanks, Josh.
Welcome, Lucas.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on, guys. We're going to dive straight in. What's the one thing about aging that scares you both most?
Oh, that I run out of time to get everything done that I want to do.
Really?
Yeah.
That in one lifetime you can't fit it all in?
Yes. I need to hit 100 at least because I've just got so much to do, so many places to explore, so many things to learn, people to meet, foods to taste, countries to see. I worry I'll run out of time.
Is it so travel is a big part of it?
Yeah, travel and exploring and learning.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Every day I'm curious. So the day that I'm not is probably the time to close the lid on the box.
Curiosity.
Mm.
I think when it comes to aging, that might be something that people lose along the way. That they limit their curiosity or they put a lid on it. They stop becoming curious. Do you think that curiosity plays a part for you in feeling young?
I think it's the very core of who I am. I think maybe we lose curiosity a little as we just grow up, become an adult, and have so many other things to think about other than jumping in a puddle and, drawing and playing and reading. Obviously, life gets in the way, but I just think a day where I don't find out something new or meet somebody new or have a chat to somebody that I didn't expect to and find out what makes them tick feels to me a waste. So I hope personally I never lose that sense. I seriously think I'm going to be that old lady pottering down the street with my little trolley going, hello, who are you? What do you do? Maybe not sounding like that, but, my husband laughed that back in the days where we used to have the toll operators on the Sydney Harbour Bridge, I'd always take that lane so I could say hello to them and have a chat. So I think that'll continue forever.
I'm like that at Coles.
Yes.
And I've honestly, the self-checkout.
Oh, it's boring.
I find it boring. I actually miss the interplay. And so when there is an opportunity to go and chat to the checkout person, I'm like, I want to know about them. And I'm really interested.
Well, when you get in a cab and often it's the passenger that has to listen to the driver chatting. Well, I think for me it's the other way around. I'm sure the drivers are like, oh God, this woman's not going to shut up. But I'm like, who are you? What do you do? Why are you here? Where are you from?
Tell me about your journey.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Why are you a specialist in engineering and having to do this? Well, why is this country annoying? Like that. So we're very similar like that. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's why we get along.
Poor Lucas, good luck getting a word in.
I think for me, I'm more so focused on maintaining health span more so than lifespan. So maximizing the quality of life as you age.
So the thing that scares you most is losing health span,
losing the ability to run, to be athletic, to be have that vitality. I think that's the one thing that I sort of fear the most around aging is that also being able to use my brain to its fullest potential as well. I think I'm most fearful around losing the ability to remember things like that. That's
dementia, Alzheimer's.
Yeah. It'd be pretty devastating to sort of experience that, I think.
Yeah, I've got to say, anytime I watch or listen to anything that contains dementia and Alzheimer's, it hits a real part of my heart that it really strikes an emotional chord. Even bloody The Notebook.
Yeah.
That part of it just really gets me. I get very, very emotional about that.
Especially things that are out of your control. I think there's a lot of, you would know way more than I do, but a lot of health things that we have the ability to have a degree of control over and looking after ourselves, whereas there's so many others that we've just got no control.
Yeah.
And I think that's what would be quite frightening. It's nothing you can actually do to prevent it.
Yeah. That's one of the main reasons why I've entered into this sort of biohacking space is to educate people on what they can do within their control. How can they set up their environment? How do they minimize, xenoestrogens, plastics?
Sorry, what?
This is where we're going with this. Yeah.
So looking at because I'm always on the sort of the cutting edge of what's the latest toxin that we need to be conscious of? How do we avoid them?
I heard you talking about coffee cups the other day.
Yeah, the inner lining.
The inner lining of your coffee cup.
Yeah, they contain what happens is when you use a hot beverage within the cup, it can actually seep out some of the microplastics. And they're starting to do research on how they actually build up into different organs and tissues over time. So I'm
what negative effect are they having on us?
Well, they can lead to, oxidative stress, which means they can basically damage cells. They can lead to increases in body-wide inflammation. And they can trigger the immune system. Some of them are so powerful that they're being studied now to actually activate autoimmune diseases as well, which is, I guess, it's something to be conscious of.
Which is really an autoimmune disease is really just the body fighting itself.
Correct. Yeah. So I guess how do we sort of open up that discussion around microplastics.
So bring your ceramic cup in when you get to your takeaway local cafe.
If you can, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will.
Yeah, we will. Things we learn.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Biohacking can already feel pretty overwhelming. We've already heard about coffee cups. If someone's a beginner, can we have 3 steps that you would recommend, biohacking steps that you would recommend, just off the bat?
Yeah. So first of all, I want to sort of define that term. So the biohacking to me is the ability to manipulate or change your environment to optimize your health.
Yep.
So it's some people will they understand that when they exercise, they notice an improvement in their mental health, right? They feel reductions in anxiety, improvements in mood, things like that. 3 simple steps for your audience. I'd say the first one would be a really simple one is just wearing those blue light blocking glasses before bedtime.
Really?
Yeah. So
what do they do?
So have you seen those weird looking orange colored tinted glasses? Well, you basically put those on 3 hours before bedtime. And what that does is it minimizes artificial light exposure, which can actually dampen your body's melatonin production. So the whole objective behind it is how do we mimic what it's like to live in a cave, which is we didn't rely on artificial lights. We basically had just, candle lights, and the sun would go down, our body would know that it's time to sleep. So when people are looking at sort of getting into biohacking, I always recommend the most powerful intervention first, which is anything to help with sleep quality. Is if we're looking at living a very long time, a very healthy and long life, sleep is the foundational aspect of healthy aging.
So you would say that sleep is the most important factor?
I would say it's an important factor.
After, food, water.
I think it trumps all of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Just because of the the widespread effect it can have on every system. If you don't sleep enough, then your appetite goes up. Then you tend to snack more and you tend to eat poor foods. So usually we're looking at healthy aging. I think sleep is really it needs to be prioritized. At least 7 to 8 hours of good quality sleep.
What happens if you can't sleep? What if you go, you had an event to go to last night and tonight and tomorrow night, and they all finish at 11:30, but you got to be up for work at 5:30, so you're max going to get 5-6 hours sleep. What can you do?
Well, in that case, what happens? The body does build up what's called a sleep deficit. So you're just accumulating a number of hours of a deficit, and then you would have to there's some research into whether or not you could actually pay it back in terms of then you can just sleep in on one big day and just do a big 12 or 13 hour sleep and just hopefully catch up on it. But the body is really smart.
Pay interest on that?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So unfortunately, the body keeps score. There's a book written about that, but
Vessel.
Yeah. So I think I would say sleep's number 1. Number 2 would be, I'm going to bring it up here because I know your audience would probably like to hear this. Good quality social interactions and or relationships, I think is a really important point. And then number 3, I would say is optimizing nutrition, making sure you're eating well. I'm just going to put in quotation marks well because
whole food diet.
Whole food diet.
Yep.
Minimal processed foods. Making sure that you're doing blood work to check whether or not you're low in zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, vitamin B12. Because I've said this many times before, but I think any nutrient deficiency can accelerate aging. And if you're going long enough in a state where you're deficient in, let's say, vitamin D or vitamin B12 or any other vitamin, it will inevitably slow down your system.
Mm. So, you've tried pretty much everything. Peptides, red light therapy, you ice your balls, you do you do everything, mate. What you've given us sort of these 3, sleep, social interaction that's healthy and nutrition. What's one that people just really overlook that is just an easy one that you could just pick up and
please
change?
don't say icing your balls.
Yeah.
I won't say that one. An easy one, I would say.
Can you tell us why we do that? Just by the way?
Yeah. So like that's probably how I'm like pretty well known in this space. Is I've sort of popularized like all men should be icing their balls, and the reason for that is because male fertility is on a massive decline, and
Really?
there's estimated that like in 35 years, most men in the Western world will be infertile, which is staggering and it's quite scary.
Why?
Well, obesity is a big factor.
Okay.
If you look at the literature, they say like, excess body fat accumulation leads to inflammation and it's, again, affects the hormones. But in addition to that, I think it's just the constant influx of like toxins that we're exposed to in our environment. Like I mentioned before, the microplastics, they're known to accumulate in the testes and build up and cause damage to the testes. Sedentary lifestyles like alcohol consumption, cigarette smoking, like a lot of different factors
But
affecting.
aren't they down? Like, aren't we smoking less than we?
I think so. But I think the problem is people are still uneducated around like making the right decisions when it comes to like nutrition. They're still thinking that certain foods are healthy when they're not. I think our environment is not getting cleaner per se. If anything, it's getting more dirty in a sense. Like there's things in tap water that you'd be quite surprised to find.
So the one thing that people are overlooking, men especially, is icing their balls. That's the one thing you'd say?
Well, I'd say icing the testes, the whole practice goes around if a guy is looking to optimize fertility and testosterone production naturally, then applying an ice pack up against his underwear for 10 to 15 minutes 3 times a day will have a beneficial effect on his fertility and his testosterone. So it's a free, cheap sort of intervention that, works quite well. And there's a number of like other health coaches and practitioners that are recommending it to their clients
You need to invent a little like plug-in ice chair. Like you could sit on a little stool that sort of is chilly.
There we go.
Yeah, a cool stool.
the chili chair.
Yeah,
Behind the
chilly
Mask
chair.
podcast, where people come to create their own new businesses.
You say it, we make it.
Yeah. Great stuff. Thank you for that.
I want to know though how you don't freak out. So I'm a news journo and every now and then I'd have to step back from the news cycle because it would start to get a bit depressing with all the bad things happening in the world. How do you not listen to all of this and freak out and panic?
Yeah, it can be like I studied naturopathy. So like I was studying amongst what I would call like hypochondriacs and or like people who are orthorexic, which is like paranoid about their health all the time. I think being in a state of constantly trying to be healthy can be extremely unhealthy as well. So I'm pretty good about 80% of the time. And then I do let my hair down and just like enjoy myself and, I'll have cheat meals here and there. Like I'm conscious that if you adhere to it too like strongly, then it can be like, it can deteriorate your own, sanity sort of thing.
Yeah, you got to find the balance too.
Yeah. Otherwise it's just, and I still see other people in my in my course where they're still stuck in that state. And I just I'm looking at them thinking, if you still are so paranoid about avoiding gluten, like not having a cheat meal, going over your macros, like doing all that, I think that in itself can be pro-aging.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of stress involved in that.
The
I think we'll
stress.
talk about stress shortly. You're big into supplements.
Yeah,
You got a new supplement business as well.
Yeah.
You got to drop that. Come on.
Yeah,
Drop
so
that.
the brand name's In Before, INB4.
Great.
Yeah.
3 sups that we should be taking.
All right. So the first one, I'm going to put this out there because I know a lot of your audience can benefit from it.
Yep.
I would say the first one is linked to stress, like you said before. A high quality magnesium supplement at nighttime can do wonders for the body in terms of regulating the nervous system, reducing cortisol, which is the master stress hormone in the body, helping with preventing an excess buildup of glutamate, which is a neurotoxin that we produce in large amounts. And in addition to that, magnesium is very difficult to hit your recommended daily intake through diet alone. And second to that, our soils and our foods are they're not as rich in magnesium as they were like 100 years ago. So I think it's a great supplement.
Is that because of farming and the way we crop and farm?
Yeah. There's many factors. Plus, there's things in our environment that can deplete us of magnesium as well. And even like if you're training very hard, then if you're sweating a lot, if you're jumping into a sauna, these things they can all sort of deplete magnesium. So I'd say a magnesium supplement can go a pretty long way for most people in terms of managing stress, helping with sleep quality, and things like that. So that's number one. Number two, I would say vitamin D. The reason I say vitamin D is because there's enough research now that suggests that if you are low in vitamin D, and you're heading into like the cold and flu season, that if you're on the low end of the reference range for vitamin D, your likelihood of developing a very severe cold and a very severe flu is increased. So therefore, based upon the evidence, it makes sense for people to be on the upper end of the reference range. And in Australia, that's between 100 to 150. That's our reference range. That can do a great job at just like fortifying the immune system. And then you'll have people that say, why don't you just get vitamin D from the sunlight? And then I say, that's personally how I try and get my vitamin D, because I love being in the sun, and I think the sun is great, feel great. But for some people, they can't get that sunlight exposure. That's where vitamin D supplements can be really beneficial to like bump up their stores.
Are you big on sunlight first thing in the morning?
Massive. Yeah.
And that also, from what I've learned, that helps sleep, right?
Yeah. So when people ask like, what's the number one thing you suggest for sleep, I sort of say, good quality sleep begins the moment you wake up. And the reason I say that is because if you're getting that sunlight exposure, hitting your retina, hitting your skin, that actually can synchronize your circadian rhythm, which actually tells your body that once it gets dark at that night, then melatonin levels start to rise and, sleep quality is improved. There's some people, by the way, that actually do sun gazing as well, which is a very extremist sort of biohacking thing where they actually directly look at the sun in the morning as well.
This hasn't got to do with testes into the sun as well. Is that another?
That's another. And this perineal.
Yeah, I've seen that one too. There's a lot.
Sunning their bum holes.
Sunning their, but like we're going everywhere, Mel.
Wow.
So wake up and meet the sun. Get outdoors.
Yeah, best thing. Not behind a window. Not behind a window.
Right.
It has to be outside. You actually have to be outside because you're getting the UV. This certain frequency of a wavelength of light that you actually need that hitting your face. If you're someone who wakes up a little bit later, then I've got a similar like light boxes at home, and I just use those to like wake me up.
The ones in the studio, yeah.
Yeah.
But two birds, one stone. Get your ceramic cup. Go for a walk to your cafe.
And sit in the sun.
Yeah, get that sunlight and
That's a very simple, when people hear the word biohacking, like we've just spoken, like that in and of itself is very simple.
Yeah.
And that technically is biohacking because you're doing it with the intention to improve your health.
Mm.
Some people do it, they already do it, and they're not even knowing that they're biohacking, but that's like the philosophy around biohacking.
I've got to say, I've had a recent puppy come into my life, and she's so cute. And
I was really hoping she'd be here today.
Yeah, I know. I should have brought it you. And I knew about, like there's lots of things I know about and I don't do. And one is getting sunlight first thing in the morning. But because I need to take her out to do her business, I'm going outside straight away in the morning, and I have noticed my sleep is substantially better. I'm falling asleep immediately. And I've been getting up at night at times for quite some time. Actually, pretty much on and off since I was doing Les Mis in 2023. Really stuffed my sleep patterns. I'm sleeping better than I ever have in the last week. And I wouldn't be surprised if that has something to do with it.
Are you barefoot when you do it?
Always barefoot.
Yeah. So that's the other part of like aspect to it is grounding or earthing. So like being barefoot, exposing your body to the earth can actually help to, it's like the earth is basically like a big antioxidant. So like if you're doing the grounding or earthing, you're actually like decharging your body. So that could actually have a beneficial effect as well.
Brilliant. Okay, so this is helping. Number 3 sup. So we've got magnesium, Vit D, and the last one.
Number
and then
3,
I've got so much to get to Mel on.
I'm taking mental notes.
I know, it's so good.
Yeah.
Number 3, it's convenient. It's very accessible, very cheap, and very widespread in terms of its benefits, is an amino acid called taurine.
I've heard of this.
Yeah, you may have seen it in like Red Bull and Mother drink, like energy drinks. Taurine is not a stimulant. It's not for like making you feel jacked up or wired and that sort of stuff. Taurine is the opposite. Taurine is a calming amino acid that works on the GABA system. So basically, GABA is what alcohol works on, right? So when people drink alcohol and they say that they feel more socially fluent, they feel calmer in social settings, they just feel in the mood to socialize. A lot of the benefits that they're getting is from the fact that alcohol hits the GABA receptor in the brain. So we all have these GABA receptors, and they're like it's the inhibitory neurotransmitter that makes you feel calmer, less anxious, and things like that. Taurine hits that same receptor as alcohol, but it does it in a way that does not damage your liver at the same time. It does not damage your kidneys at the same time. It doesn't damage your brain. If anything, it actually helps your kidneys, helps your brain, and even helps to detoxify the liver at the same time. So you're sort of like killing 2 birds with 1 stone with taurine.
So how do you get that?
Just up at
Just as like a powder. You can
so it's not natural
Chemist
anywhere?
Warehouse.
But I mean, is it in a food or something? Can you also eat something particular? I'm hoping you said it'd be like dark chocolate or something lavish. But
seafood is rich in taurine.
Really?
Yeah. So shellfish. Yeah.
Okay.
Which is, again, if you want to use that as a form of boosting your taurine, you can do that.
Well, I always feel happy after a plate of prawns.
Oh, who doesn't? Yeah.
In the sun with my wine in a ceramic cup.
Such a good combo. Thank you so much for all of that, Luke. There was such good info there.
Yeah.
Mel, I want to know, shifting paths on this. What inspired you to write your book, How to Age Against the Machine? So
it started back in 2020. I turned 50. And I just had so many people saying to me, oh my gosh, how do you feel about turning 50? And it was kind of one of those moments where I thought, well, I feel exactly the same as I did yesterday. But it just, as a journo, then it made me explore the whole phenomenon and these big milestone birthdays. So I did an audio documentary with Audible on it's called Age Against the Machine. And we explored everything to do with societal expectations and our own perceptions around aging and what holds us back and what hinders us. And then off the back of that, a fabulous team at Hardy Grant said, do you want to write a book? So that was great because it let us do a way deeper dive into everything to do with aging as far as health, what your body needs. I wish I'd known you at the time, Lucas. I would have given you a million questions to answer. But, what does your mind need and what does your body need and how can you stay healthy? But then we also explored things like, relationships and how you feel about yourself and how you look and how the world sees you. And one of the guiding questions that we kept coming back to in it was, what's the difference between becoming elderly and becoming an elder? Mm-hmm. And that became a bit of a compass for us to answer.
What was the difference for you?
Oh, for me personally, it was really interesting because everyone had very different answers and there's no right or wrong answer. For me, elderly was almost a negative response to aging, diminishing it, looking at the negatives that come with it, whereas to become an elder feels like you're leaning into the wonderful things, the wisdom, the learnings. It's almost respecting the process. But we found people had really different ideas and thoughts about aging and so much of it depends on your own circumstances. If you're healthy, you're employed, you're stable, you might be in a relationship. All of those factors, they definitely made a big difference to one's aging journey. So we sorry, it was a very long way of answering that question.
No,
but
great
just sparked so many questions. So
and I have so many questions around it. I love that elderhood or eldership came into it. It's something that's come on this show a bit at different times. And it's interesting, the first word you used to describe it was wisdom.
Yeah.
As opposed to knowledge. and how those two might be different.
Yes.
You know, it's like knowledge is about receiving information and holding it, and wisdom is about who you are.
And sharing it. I don't think we do that enough. We talked about the role of a matriarch in many societies. We interviewed a queen mother in Ghana whose job is to steer her community, particularly the younger people and younger women, on make sure you stay at school and, you know, all the things that would set up a young woman's life to be in a better position as she gets older. We spoke to the most extraordinary First Nations woman here in Australia and her daughter about the role of matriarchs in society. I just don't think we respect the role and the things that we can learn from our elders maybe as much as we used to. We're such a youth-obsessed culture in so many ways, everything from, you know, how we look to who we employ in the workplace to who we revere as leaders. And I just think maybe we've lost a little bit of that to look at some of the people that, you know, as a kid, you think about the role that your grandparents might have played in your life and what they could teach you. I wish we did that a little more still intergenerationally, and not necessarily just within your own family. But, you know, I've got this amazing woman who lives next door to me. We've lived in the same house for 20-something years, and she's a grandma. And when my kids were little, oh my gosh, I was always running in and asking her questions. She was a nurse, and I felt like she just saved us so many times. But, you know, why don't we tap into one another more and what we can learn from others?
It poses a lot of questions because, and some of them you touched upon, is that we're being taught more and more as a society that we need to be young. And so it's almost like we're diminishing as a society the roles of elders and the roles of the elderly and even what it is to age. But then on the flip side, I know I was like this, and so many young people like this. We hit 16, we want to be 18, we want to be 21, we want to be, you know, it's like you're never comfortable where you are. It's like, what is the sweet spot? Like, is it 30 to 40? Like, where is our sweet spot? Because if we're at that age, you know, if we're aged, you know, or elderly, and we're wishing for something else.
And if you ask anyone what old is, it's usually older than you are.
Yeah.
So if you're 80, you know, 90's old.
Yeah.
So I guess it's always in relation to where you are at that point in life. But I just think so much of the language is negative.
Yeah.
Like even women's and men's, but skincare, why is it anti-aging?
Yeah, that's
like
what
you're
that's what
aging
I mean.
from the moment you're born. And the alternative is a finite solution. So may we continue to age, otherwise you're dead. You know, and I just think, I don't know why there's so much focus that I think we've gone down a path where it's negative. So much of the content, or even look at ads for retirement or superannuation, and they're always women and men with grey hair shuffling around in comfortable shoes. You know, well, that's not necessarily what people at 70 or 80 are like
Not at
anymore.
all.
So why do we have this perception? We sort of see it infiltrating everything from all sorts of aspects of our culture and our advertising and on screen and just the language, the way we speak, even in a workplace. You know, ageism is still so prevalent. We saw during COVID, particularly when businesses were forced to downsize, often the first group to go were women over 50 because there's this perception that they're slower to learn new skills. Well, I laugh at my kids. My favourite meme is, so what if I need your help with the printer? I taught you to use a knife and fork. You know, so come and help mum with the damn computer. But there are things that I know at my age that you can pass on. And I think our perceptions that we're slower to learn things are really holding us all back. I want to see a work, you know, we're making such progress in, within sexism and so many other parts of the workplace. We need to make sure that ageism is looked at as well.
Yeah. My parents are going to love listening to you on this episode because you're speaking on behalf of them in many ways. What do you think about, the notion that it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, and that, you know, where there's so much new information coming out all the time? I mean, Lucas is providing us with stuff right now that we
But that's why Lucas is here. isn't
exactly.
it? You know, you tap into that knowledge, and I just think we've all got things there. I'm sure there are things that you're still learning from, whether it be your parents or the older generation. We all need one another. My 21-year-old daughter is constantly teaching me things and getting me to think about things in a different way and have conversations that I didn't ever have, or that my generation might have a different view on things. I love it that my kids are making me think about things differently.
So it cuts both ways.
It cuts both ways,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think it does. Hey, I mean, you interviewed so many women. You've mentioned some of the matriarchs and different women from different countries and societies, and it's just amazing how many different women you interviewed. What was the most moving insight that you had that sort of shaped your own personal reflection on yourself?
I think it was that as we get older, there's a lot of things we have to let go of as we age. It might be letting go of people. It might be letting go of plans that you had. It might be letting go of who you used to be, how you used to look, what you used to do, what your body used to do.
Or capable of doing, yeah.
Yeah. You know, I go to the gym and there's a hell of a lot of things I just can't do anymore. And I know I'm going to fall over and hurt myself, so I'm not going to try. But there's things that you might have had, I don't know, dreams of doing certain things. There are things that we have to let go of and that we have to mourn. But I think the thing I learned was that we need to sometimes maybe reinvent our purpose. You know, what is it that is going to continue keeping you engaged with the world and with yourself and with all of those things that matter as you get older? And it may well be very different at 60 or 80 than it was at 20 or 30. It's still just as important, but your purpose changes. When I wrote one of the chapters on kids and empty nesters, our son left home to go to uni in the US, and farewelling him at 20 to get on a plane and travel to the other side of the world was a really hard thing as a family unit. Suddenly, you know, the dining table, we had to reconfigure where everybody sat, and so much shifted in our home. And as a parent, but in my case, you know, as a mum, so much of my focus had been on my children, and suddenly one's gone and he's doing his thing on the other side of the world. And I just thought, oh my gosh, what's my role changes. And so, you know, I'm lucky that I'm still working, and that is a big part of my purpose. But a lot of people's circumstances change. You might find that you no longer have a partner, or your children have left home, or you're no longer working in the capacity that you were, or your job might change. So what's our purpose going forward? And I think it's really important to do a bit of a self-audit on who am I? Where am I going? What do I want to do next?
Why do I want to do it?
Yeah. And what have I got still to learn? And what are some different things that I can do? And maybe it's a complete change in direction, but we just can't lose sight that we've still got to keep, probably comes back to what we talked about earlier about curiosity, but got to keep learning and doing and striving and cooking up ideas and trying new things and meeting new people. You know, comes back to what Lucas was saying too about community, isn't it? Relationships.
Yeah. I love that because I run a women's circle monthly online, which is beautiful. They're all clients who've meditated with me over the last 5 years. And this year we've decided to grab Clarissa Pinkola Estez's bestseller, Women Who Run with the Wolves, which is a great book that I recommend everyone reads, men as well as women. But it's full of short stories and great wisdom. But what she talks about as a theme throughout the book is the idea of life, death, life cycles. That something is always born into with this capacity to, you know, lift weights or whatever and go to the gym and do these certain exercises at the gym, and then something dies. And as we age or whatever, it dies. And we have to let go of that. But as we let go of that, something's born. A new idea, a new way of doing things. And if we're constantly in the mindset that we're going through life, death cycles, it might be a death of an idea or a belief system that opens up new belief systems. And if we can see life through that, we're constantly living with a growth mindset. We're constantly living purposefully. There's constantly curiosity. There's constantly newness and freshness and a play to life that means that doesn't mean we don't mourn or grieve or sit in the pain of death, but we realize that it's not just the end. There's an opportunity for rebirth in some new way.
And seeing the beauty in every season. We did a women's circle in Byron Bay, and this incredible woman explained to me that, we're the seasons. You're born, you're spring, and then you move into the summer of your life, and then you're in the autumn, and then you're in your winter. But every season in itself is beautiful and unique. And who doesn't love the gorgeous blooms of spring that are so pretty and fresh? But also, you can't tell me a gorgeous, cold, snowy, wintry afternoon where you've got your, I'll say healthy hot chocolate because Lucas is here. I won't, say
Mulled
what
wine.
I really want to drink. Yeah.
Oh.
In front of a fireplace with snow outside isn't just as beautiful. So embracing all of the seasons and all that they bring us and who we are, and knowing that it's natural, that you're lucky if you get to experience all of them, that, the alternative is not one that any of us want.
Yeah, and you are lucky to get to experience it because you were one in however many billion shots at having a chance of it, and maybe even less now unless we start.
Hopefully Dad had a cold stool and he
yeah.
sat on it and was doing all the right things.
We've all got a heart story to tell, don't we? The one that lives behind the many masks we wear. On this show, you get to hear those stories from our incredible guests who come on each episode and share theirs. Now it's time I shared mine. Last year was the hardest one I've faced in my life and career. There were 2 vocal surgeries, a high-speed near-death experience, and the ongoing health struggles of my father. It felt like the most appropriate time to put pen to paper. The Behind the Mask book is memoir meets self-development, an opportunity to share the wild, honest, funny, and at times very vulnerable anecdotes of a career in showbiz, intertwined with the lessons, learnings, and wisdoms I've gained along the way. I share my struggles with anxiety, imposter syndrome, health battles, eating disorders, and that feeling of not enoughness. Most importantly, I share how I moved through it. My intention is not only for you to really meet this human being beyond the many iterations of human doing, but to help you navigate your way through life with a deeper sense of self, meaning, and purpose. I truly hope you come along for the ride and grab yourself a copy. The book is available at online stores or in stores, but I recommend purchasing through the great people at Readings. Head to readings.com.au to get your copy. You're right about the invisibility many women feel as they get older. What do you think needs to change, if not our own or women's own perception of self, but culturally, societally, within media, within social media? What?
Oh gosh, that's a really big one.
It is.
We interviewed Paulina Poroskova.
How do we challenge the narrative is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah, Paulina, beautiful supermodel of the 90s, like stunning. And she talked about suddenly realizing that she would walk into a room and not everyone's head would turn, that she had spent the first, 20-something years of her life turning heads, that was her currency. She's gorgeous. And I look at her and she still is gorgeous. But she said she noticed the shift when people didn't look at her any longer. And for some women, particularly if you've been, beautiful by traditional standards, it's a change. I think we just need to realize that there's beauty in everything. I look at a face that's got lines because, I'm kind of happy. I wish I didn't have so many wrinkles, but I've got laugh lines because I've been laughing for 55 years. I look at faces that tell stories, and I think we just need to see them more. And, I think we're seeing a lot more high-profile women who are older on screen, on camera, in advertising campaigns. We need to see what a real face looks like, and an older one, and in men as well. I think there's beauty to be had in so many other things. It comes back to the seasons, doesn't it? Yes, a gorgeous brand new spring rose is stunning, but so is an older antique one with those beautiful big petals that are starting to show texture and depth of colour. You can't tell me autumn leaves lying across the grass in all of their shades of gold
I know.
aren't just as beautiful. And I just want us to stop and recognise that a little bit more.
Well, I think, I want to pull on that because the American Society of Plastic Surgeons reports an average of a 5% increase in procedures year on year since 1992. So girls as young as 13
Wow.
lining up for Botox, according to The Guardian, and the ABC here reports that 40% of 20 to 29-year-old women are having it done. 40%.
In America?
No, here.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
At 20, you're perfect. I mean, seriously, it doesn't get better.
But you speak to a 20-year-old girl now, and they're challenging that because they see a curated version of someone on a grid on an app that tells them that their own psyche and their own sense of self-worth that hasn't been fully formulated, that isn't fully grounded yet, it's saying that I'm not enough. And what are your feelings towards how normalized this is becoming? Like 40% of women in their 20s.
I think it's...
And what's it really masking? What are we...
I think social media has been, in particular for this sort of scenario, I find that quite scary, like just to hear those sort of stats, just to sort of hear how influential it's sort of been in terms of what you said there, hitting the nail on the head in terms of I'm not enough. And then you see the apps where they've got like these, the filters, facial beautifying, enhancing filters, that sort of stuff. I think there's a lot going on there. And I think it's scary to sort of hear that happening in such a young age group where they're very vulnerable, very sensitive. They haven't built out their sense of self-worth. They don't understand who they are. They're still understanding their core values, trying to make sense of the world. I think it's quite staggering actually.
I think each to his own, and I fully respect if somebody chooses to do something to change their appearance or enhance something. I think that's absolutely their call. You've got to do it for the right reasons. We spoke to a psychologist who said, don't think that suddenly going along and getting a little nip and tuck is going to fix everything and make life perfect, because that's not. So if you're doing it for the right reasons to make you feel better about yourself, you might have come out of a breakup, you might have lost a job, it might be something that is just the boost that someone's self-confidence needs, then absolutely go for it. It's your decision. But I do think we're getting to a point where what we see isn't always, we don't see enough real faces, I don't think, reflected. But then I can remember doing a photo shoot when Talia, my youngest, was, 3 months old. We did it for a magazine, and I got the original photos, which was very lovely, and then I looked at the cover, and we'd both been airbrushed. And I remember thinking to myself, you've airbrushed a 6-month-old baby who I think is perfect, just to even out skin tone, like nothing major. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't a Kardashian filter, but they're the images that we've always seen in advertising and on screen. So, I'm in a television studio, well, the biggest bank of lights in front of me to blast out the wrinkles to make us look better. That's just how it goes. But I think we've almost lost the sense of what does a real 50-year-old face look like? What does a real 80-year-old face look like?
What does a real 13-year-old face look like?
Yeah, it breaks my heart at 13.
So there is a point for you where you go, okay, as a mother, you just go, nah.
Yeah, I don't think that would be, surely that's not ethical to do things to,
because it's not actually their choice that has to be approved by parents. It's a 13-year-old kid. Yeah. They're a minor.
We spoke to a cosmetic surgeon in South Korea, and she said that it's becoming quite a thing for families to give their daughters a graduation gift, which is surgery. Like it's becoming so normal, and that they will often take transport home with all their bandages because they're quite proud of it. It's not a thing that they hide anymore. They're quite open about it. So
did well on my ATAR.
Yeah,
I'm getting a new nose.
Me a nose. Yeah. I mean, we're going down a slippery slope where.
So I just think it's fucked up. I'm just saying, I just think it's really fucked up. And I'm with you. I'm all for, I've dated women who've had lips and tits and Botox and all sorts of things. And they're women. They're adults who are making choices based on their own sense of self, where they are in the world. They have they're doing it with, I hope, some level of conscious awareness. And this is their decision. But there's got to be a point where it's just like, hey, come on, like Can we work on who you are before we work on trying to change who you think you need to be?
Let you find out who you are
First.
before you make a decision. I think back to that age. I was, all the years that I probably could have worn a bikini and I was too shy to. And now that I can't, I'm like, damn it, I wish I had when I had the opportunity. I think, at that age, you just don't recognize what you have. And
this applies to men too, I want to say.
Yeah, I have no doubt.
Yeah, maybe not these exact figures, but yeah.
Well, there's the most extreme version of biohacking is actually deliberately avoiding the sun. Like, for example, Brian Johnson.
Yeah.
He's like he's the slowest aging.
Do you know him?
No.
He's the slowest rate of aging as a man in the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
So he wants to live to what, 150?
He wants to live beyond 100, right? So he's aging at a rate of 0.48 years per year, according to a particular marker of like basically telomere length and biological. So basically, he's trying to slow down the rate of aging, and he's going real hard against it. He's pushing really far against it, and he avoids all sunlight exposure, completely avoids all sunlight exposure. And many people have left comments on YouTube saying you look like a ghost, like you're very pale, that sort of stuff. So there's that's like a real.
He looks like death.
That's ironic because he wrote a book saying the book that he wrote is called "Don't Die."
I know, and I question whether what really drives people like Brian Johnson. Like, is it to chase immortality? Is it to chase biological perfection, or is it a fear of death? Like this quest for control. Like,
is he happy?
Who
doesn't want to lie on a picnic blanket on a Sunday afternoon and have too many wines and fall asleep in the sunshine? And I don't know. There's got to be balance, hasn't there?
The majority of the comments on his videos, basically mirror what you've said.
Yeah. And then I look at people like who died young, and I go, oh God, I wish they were still here. But they lived multiple lifetimes. Shane Warne, Freddie Mercury. I mean, I'm talking about famous people generally. And I go, well, some of them are still here. I feel like, I stick to the music world because it's what I know really well. But I think Elton John and Billy Joel have lived so many lifetimes.
Keith Richards.
Oh my God. And they haven't done it that way, but God, they've sucked the juice out, all the nectar out of this one that they've got in this body this time. So,
I think for someone like Brian Johnson, he's trying to show people that it is possible to there are all these different interventions within the biohacking space that have some degree of evidence to suggest that they can, reduce inflammation, help with oxidative stress, and just delay aging in particular. And so what he's trying to popularize is the fact that, hey guys, by the way, you can actually, there are certain things you can do with your nutrition, with your sleep, with your supplements, with your lifestyle, with your stem cell injections, with things like that can actually have an effect on the rate at which you age. Now, that's a completely different subject to how much do you enjoy life? Because I think that's a different.
This is a quality versus quantity thing here.
Right.
Because you could have 100 very diligent years that helped you live to 100, or you could have, 78 or 83 or 85 years where you undulated through all the human experiences, some of which were terrific, some of elation and all the wonderful, blissful things, and some which were really, really shit, and you felt all of them too. And sort of feel like, for me, that's what being a human is. And anything that is about pushing quantity but relinquishing quality, for me, I think it's a fear of death.
Yeah. And it's also
I really do think it's around a fear of death.
It's the inability to adapt. And it's like what you said, enjoying the fact that you're living in summer, autumn, winter, spring.
I love that analogy.
It's the polarity, being able to adapt to the world is not one straight line. It's full of ups and downs, and your ability to adapt, I think, is what it means to be human.
And we wrote a chapter on end-of-life planning and grief because I don't think we talk about it enough in society. I think it's. I mean, look, don't get me wrong. Clearly, it's a really sad thing, but it's also someone's life has to be celebrated when they pass. And I wish we had more conversations about what are your wishes? What do you want? We spoke to this incredible holistic sort of funeral director, I guess you'd call her. She doesn't like that term, but she said that, we book these chapels, you go in for your 45-minute service, the next lot's waiting outside, you kind of go out one door and they come in another and here's a little brochure and sing a few songs and you're done, Whereas so many societies, there was an amazing high priestess in Indonesia, and she said when her time comes, they have a 3-day festival in the village and everyone cooks and everyone eats and everyone sings, and it's just this wonderful recognition of who she was and what she did and what she contributed to society. Why don't we do that? I mean, you don't have to have a 3-day festival when I die, but, a little bit more to remember and appreciate and celebrate a life. Rather than
we're ritualizing.
Burning Man? Is Burning Man festival in relation to anything like that, where they're celebrating?
It's a great festival. I don't know what it celebrates, but I know they had a wild time.
I've never been. I thought maybe you've been.
I've not because I've done enough psychedelics.
That's why I brought it up.
I've never done them other than going to Coldplay. Right. I've never done psychedelics without it being ceremonial, and I don't see Burning Man as ceremonial. If you listen to our recent episode on psychedelics, Dr. Prash does talk about the fact that if Burning Man, if psychedelics could just heal anyone who went to Burning Man would be healed, but it's not the case. I love what you're saying there. It's about celebrating life and ritualizing that, and we see it as something quite more. But I'll ask you, what do you guys feel like the opposite of death is?
Well, I'd say life, but I guess it's probably you're asking a deeper question that I'd have to think about. But
because it's me and you're assuming that it's going to be really deep.
Yeah, you're my deep friend.
Yeah, my deep friend. Birth.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean life or
like
birth.
That was a trick question.
But
I was going to say,
is
the beginning.
The opposite of death is change. That's what I was thinking.
Oh yeah, but birth is the beginning, and death is the end, and life is everything that happens in between those two points, and
death is the end for us, but it's not the end of who you were. Exactly. It's not the end of your memory and your legacy and your achievements and what you did and what you passed on. And back to what we were talking before about mentoring and sharing wisdom. When you go, that still exists.
Oh God!
And how can we embrace that more and so make it maybe not feeling so finite might make it less frightening.
Yeah.
How do we revere the people that we've loved in a more meaningful, precious way?
Yeah, if it's cookie cutter, it's never going to be that. I think we could do more to prepare for death. I think we could spend more time in practices that prepare us for death. There was a episode in season 2. Asher Packman said, write your own eulogy.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a great practice. And if you don't like the way it reads, go about changing the course. Exactly what you said. It's constantly moving. Find a new purpose. Find something.
When my father-in-law was very unwell, and his time was approaching, and my husband John would have long conversations with him about what music he wanted at his funeral, and who was going to conduct the service and what readings he wanted and all of those things. So it meant that when the time came and we were farewelling him, it felt like we were giving him the service that he wanted because it had all of those components, and it just felt as though, it sounds awful to say he'd been part of creating it, but I don't know, there's just something about that ownership of it that just I think made it a little easier, because it's a devastating time for everybody, and let's not pretend it's anything different.
No, there needs to be grief and there needs to be all of that.
Absolutely. But it doesn't need to be a negative thing. Grief can still be, maybe positive's not quite the right word, but grief is still it means that you've loved, doesn't it? It means you've met somebody so extraordinary that you miss them when they're no longer there. Yeah. And I'd rather have that feeling than never experience that. And
that is beautiful. Grief sits side by side with love.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where there isn't love, there isn't grief. And I think that's such a powerful message. Yeah. So be a part of that grief, It's almost celebrate the grief as much as you celebrate the life. Guys, you brought in a couple of quotes for me. I'd love to hear them. Lucas,
My first quote?
Yeah, well, just one. Just one is enough. One will get you through.
Well, in regards to, I mean, like if we're looking at like productivity and like health optimization, my one would be the saying, or like there is a saying, which is done is better than perfect. The reason I say that is because I worry about people who fall into this sort of biohacking trap where they're just sort of, they're constantly striving for perfection in every area, whether that's like sleep, nutrition, their supplements, that sort of stuff. I'd say that taking action that's like you've just taken one step towards in the right direction is enough to actually lead you onto a better path. So I think like done is better than perfect. That's what I would suggest for people getting into the biohacking space.
Yeah, good. And perfection even in and of itself is a dangerous thing to play in because we're never going to arrive there.
No, not even halfway, but that's okay.
Yeah. It's like maybe aim for it. I mean, I certainly as a singer, I aim many, many, many times for it. And I'd had to have an awareness around where that is helping me and where that's hindering me. It's helping me improve and better myself, but it's also the inner critic wants to be very noisy if you don't reach the lofty heights that you have in your own set of expectations. So, perfectionism can breed some imposter syndrome stuff too. So, I think it's it's a dance to be aware of. That's what I'd say.
Nicely worded.
Mel?
Mine is control the controllable, and it applies in everything from sitting in a traffic jam, my flight being late today, to career, life, and yourself, your own health, your own path, your own journey. Control what you can and just let go of what you can't.
Yeah. Surrender? Does that play a part in it for you?
I think it's letting go.
Yeah.
There are things where I just go, all right, I've got to let this ball go through to the keeper. Can't hit this one. But
have there been times in your journey where you haven't surrendered? We haven't let go. You haven't controlled the controllables. You got caught up in the things that you can't control and you've tried to control them.
Yeah, I'm sure every day there are times.
Tell me a time.
Tell
me a time
I think along the road, like I work in an industry where a lot of decisions, for example, are out of your hands and it can, a program can be axed or things can change and they're out of your control. And that's really hard and frustrating. So I think it's taken focus to go, okay, I can't actually do anything about that. What am I going to do next? The old when one door closes, another door opens.
Tell me about a door that closed. I'm getting into the juice here.
When Sunday Night was axed at the end of 2019, I was at 7 and I was devastated. It was a brilliant show. I loved it. And then I was let go from 7 in 2020. And that coincided with my 50th. It coincided with Nick leaving home. It coincided with COVID. It was like a shit year, to be honest. So it was that, okay, who am I? What am I doing? What's next? What are we going to do about this? So I wrote a book and I had
Did you get to grieve it?
Well, I don't know if I did straight away because I knew that if I stopped and did nothing, I'd go bonkers. I need to be busy. So hence I embarked on Age Against the Machine and writing it and doing the Audible part. And I wrote another book not long after. I just needed to be busy because that's best for my head. And then I think in time I more grieved what I was no longer doing day to day because I loved the job. And I, at the time when I was Sunrise and then Sunday Night, I used to say my job doesn't define me. It's not my identity. But when it ended, I suddenly realised it really was a big fat part of it. And that's how people saw me. There was always that perception of, what are you doing now?
Isn't it the worst question?
It's a really hard thing because you're contending with it yourself and trying to decide, what am I doing now? And also you need to have some lovely, positive, flippant answer for somebody that, doesn't sound like, woe is me, I'm day drinking. So, it took a little while to kind of reconfigure all of that. But then I know I don't want to sound like Pollyanna and, living on this rainbow, but I also then went, wow, what an opportunity. What am I going to do next? What do I want to do? Who am I? What drives me? Back to what I was saying before, what was my purpose, and I feel very lucky that I'd had this career that had given me a degree of a profile and a skill set and all those things that I could draw on, which I'm really lucky and grateful. What am I going to do with it now and what comes next? And that's been a fantastically exciting adventure on what do I want to do? What don't I want to do? What are the things I feel quite powerful in saying no to now? Because that's quite different than when you're starting out in your career and, let's be honest, you've got to say yes to everything. Being able to pick and choose, I feel very lucky. And doing things like writing this book, which felt really valuable to me. I felt like I was doing something that mattered and putting it out into the world and going, okay, well, I'm living this and experiencing it and got 100 million questions and I'm sure I'm not the only one. So, birth this book and send her out into the universe. But yeah, I feel very lucky that I was able to then go on and do new things and meet new people and have different experiences. And here I am chatting to both of you today and, doing House of Wellness and other exciting things have come along. So yeah, always be ready to jump through the next door opening.
Yeah. It's great advice. It's really, really sage advice.
Are you the same, Josh, in terms of wanting to keep busy as well, like always being engaged in different activities and projects, things like that?
Yes and no. I've also had to I'll go through some transitions, some of which have been sort of bestowed upon me by ailments, one of which is some vocal issues that I've had off the back of a couple of pretty bad impact injuries to the throat in 2023 that sort of left me with some, at the moment, sort of irreversible damage. But it's nothing that I can't work through. I'm just limited by the means in which I can. So I'm about to have my third vocal surgery on that. And it means that I can sing and sing well. And I was coming from a very high base, but it's not where it was. And I don't have the same stamina. It feels a bit different. And so I sort of go, well, 8 shows a week in a musical isn't my life anymore. I've had to just accept that there's a death there. And there's been a big grieving process through that. But it's also enabled me to look at what else, exactly like Mel, like what else is exciting for me. And I have a very clear understanding of my purpose. I don't know whether yours is storytelling, but I feel like that's a big part of it. I think you're such a truth teller and storyteller.
I do love the opportunity to share other people's stories.
Yeah. And I love that you're sharing some of your own today as well.
Yeah, no, it's kind of, I get nervous when it's about me.
And so that's been a transition. But I know that my purpose is very much about providing opportunities to take people to a non-ordinary place within themselves. And awaken them to that part of themselves. And that we always have to dance between the non-ordinary and the ordinary. That's life. And when we're too fixated totally in the ordinary, if life was just purely dropping the kids off at school, having wheat bix, paying your taxes and your rates and whatever, you'd feel half lived. And secondary, if life was just you're living your life in a musical and you're tripping out on mushrooms, life would be very hard lived too. We byplay between things, and I know that as an artist and as a meditation teacher and as a podcaster, as an author, it's all about giving people opportunities to feel into that which is somewhat non-ordinary and awaken that part of them. And I've had to learn that that's not going to happen through 8 shows a week in a musical. Not that it doesn't mean I don't sing, just that singing is one part of it. And I'm in that transition at the moment. And it's been sticky and it's been a bit yuck at times, but it's my life and it's my journey, and I've had to learn to just accept it. And so presenting on House of Wellness has been a part of that. Like all these little things have been little tastes.
I wonder if in, 40 or 50 years you'll look back at a pivotal moment when all of this happened and go, well, that's what I was meant to do next.
I already feel that. I already feel like it's not happening. It didn't happen to me. It's happened for me. And I really see that. And so, I know that like probably the next journey of life is around coaching and helping people. I've climbed a lot of mountains on my journey, so it's probably more about helping them climb their mountains and seeing, a different part of themselves, which is an important part to awaken as you climb any mountain, having a deeper sense of understanding of self.
Yeah. It's incredibly fulfilling then to pass that on to others. Like that in and of itself is like the gift. What that saying of like giving a gift is better than actually receiving the gift.
Oh.
It's so true.
Yeah, and it speaks to, the hero's journey, and our first part of life is generally quite self-serving. It's about what we can get from the world, and we go through our ordeals, and that's normally the second part of the hero's journey. And you learn from that ordeal, whatever that ordeal is, so that you can enter the third part of the journey, which is really about what you can give to the world.
Yeah.
And so I'm probably in that. Mel,
I was going to say also acceptance.
Acceptance.
I think that touches in everything we've talked about, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, we're getting older, we accept it. There are things happening to us that have happened for us, that have happened around us, and we have to accept it. So, yeah.
You said that you love to give space for other people to share their stories. You do it very well. One part about aging for women that I don't think is talked about enough, that is inevitable, that is unavoidable, is perimenopause and menopause.
Mm-hmm.
When that arrived in your life, what story did it begin to start?
Have you ever sat across a woman at a table and asked her about her menopause?
No.
Okay. I love it.
What story did it begin telling you about yourself?
I learnt a lot about it when we were writing, to be honest, because it's one of those things I've got to say that until it creeps up on you, it's like, I had no idea, really. So I think I'm so glad that it is being spoken about so openly in society and by so many women with profile. Thank goodness. It's a natural part of it. We know that young people go through puberty, but then afterwards we're kind of that, fingers in your ears, la, 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 like we don't want to talk about it. I think it was almost a perception, particularly for women, that once you reach that age, you are no longer sexy, you're no longer attractive, your currency was devalued because you're no longer able to provide children or look hot. That notion that suddenly you're no longer of value in the way that you were, which is ridiculous. So, I think, look, I've been fairly lucky. It's been a relatively okay path, except for a few things that sprung up that I had no idea. I used to get really, really cranky, and I just figured I was getting cranky until I, did a bit of Googling, and it was like, okay, that's a symptom. I was like, thank God. Lucky my husband is still alive. But there are things, brain fog is a real thing. I mean, I'm always pretty shocking memory-wise, but it's getting worse. I'm so bad at remembering things.
Really?
Oh, I look at it. That's like a filing cabinet.
That surprises me. That surprises me coming from
There's
you.
a filing cabinet in my head. So what I'm dealing with at that moment in time, I'm completely all over and I can remember it all. But the second I walk out the door, I'm like, Control-Alt-Delete. Got to get rid of that file to make room for more stuff to come in. So I'm not always good at remembering things. But yeah, I think it's just, probably just connected to the whole writing and exploring, getting older. It's one part of it. I feel for women that don't have all the advantages I do. And one of the reasons I wanted to write the book is because I'm a white, educated, healthy female living in Australia, married, financially secure. I'm really lucky. I tick all those boxes. But there are so many women around the world that don't have access to the medical facilities and experts that I do, that can't sit down and ask Lucas questions, that would never have heard of vitamin D. Yeah, all of those things. So I just think we all need to learn and share the information amongst male and female, but with one another on our experiences. So I think I feel really lucky that I can fly the flag on behalf of a lot of women that can't have access to the information that I can. And how do we learn from it? How do we just talk about it more? Conversations like this and conversations with blokes on, it's normal, it's natural.
I feel like my whole circle is just all we ever do is talk about, when I hear about the things around menopause, we just all talk about that sort of stuff. Maybe it's a little bubble that I'm in.
I need to hang out with you more.
Yeah. I think there's much more of it. My circles are much talking about all of this. Much
more openly accepted as well.
And I get it when you're living in a certain time point in your life, that's what you focus on. When I was in my 30s and I had small kids, I feel like that's all I spoke about was, babies and vomit and babysitting and, juggling stuff. And there are points along your life where you're so invested in that moment in time. And now that I'm, 55, I'm clearly invested in this moment in time and talking about it. And I feel like my ears prick up more when I hear about it or I see articles and there's films and whatever it might be. But I just think the way we're speaking so much more openly about mental health, the way we're speaking about so many aspects of who we are as humans, this is just another part of it.
What sort of unexpected strength or or softness that did you find within yourself during that period that sort of buried underneath the surface, behind the mask?
Behind the mask. I would probably say I think I'm a little kinder to myself than I might have been.
Really?
I'm a lot more forgiving. I've learnt now I do my best. I try to go to the gym as much as I can. But if I don't make it because things get in the way or I can't do it, that's okay. I'm not going to beat myself up over it. Or, I'll try to eat as well as I can. I'll try to ring my dad as often as I can and see my friends, or I'll try to do all of the things that I know I'm meant to be doing as much as I can. But if I don't quite hit that mark on that day or that week, that's okay. I'm doing my best. I think I'm probably just a little kinder to me. I'm a lot more, we talk about sleep. I'm a lot more aware now of, all right, I'm really tired, guys. I'm going to bed early tonight. I'm having a quiet weekend. I'm not leaving the house. I'm probably just a bit more gentle with myself and what I need, because I've always been fairly, foot on the pedal and push, push, push.
Did you notice physical changes?
Apart from a few extra kilograms and a couple more wrinkles, no, not overly.
Did that frustrate
Can't believe
you?
I just said that.
Yeah, did you? I mean, that's the tip of the iceberg of things that people say in that seat. Did they get to you? Did they upset you? Or were you able to
control the controllable?
Were you able to do that in that moment?
Probably not
I know
always
that for a
in
lot
the
of women
moment, but you do have to grapple with it. I'd be kidding myself if not. Or, we talked before about how you look. I mean, let's not joke. I don't look at a photo and go, oh my God, when did I get so crinkly? And, rush back to the hairdresser and hide the grey hairs that I really don't want to have out there. And that's my choice. But yeah, look, it is what it is. I go to the gym so that I'm strong enough to move the couch when I want to rearrange the lounge room, because I do that a lot. And I walk my dog every day.
Hold the grandkids when they come.
Yeah. But I walk my dog every day because I know I need my sunshine. Yeah. And the best way to start my day, if I can, is at the park throwing a ball for my beautiful dog. And I do things because they make me feel good, and because hopefully it'll make me live longer and still be capable of doing stuff when I'm 90. And, we talk a lot at our gym about, kind of functional fitness, which I love. So, I want to be able to carry the shopping in, and I want to be able to lift stuff, and I want to be able to get down on my hands and knees and do up my shoes and get back up when I'm 95. That's kind of what drives me. So yes, I've noticed changes. There's no doubt. I'm getting older and creakier, and I wake up in the morning and sometimes, it's like, I feel like you feel everything unfolding as you get out of bed. I have to wear contacts now because I'm, going blind. These things happen. But really, at the end of the day, big deal. If they're the worst things that I'm having to contend with, then touch wood, may they continue to be the worst things that I have to contend with.
Yeah.
I'm not always as perky as I'm sounding right now. Don't get me wrong. There are days where you just go, this is shit. But yeah, I really try hard to be glass half full and be really grateful for what I have and not focus on what I no longer have.
But that in itself is a practice. And it might be innate to you, and it might be intuitive to you, but to be able to even see things through that lens is not always possible for some. They find that very, very hard to even go, you know what, this is happening, but I'm grateful for, I'm grateful for this, and I can see the good in this as well as the struggle in this. And you might not realize, but the effect that gratitude has on our chemistry is huge. It affects the whole way our brains function. I know we go back to some words that we use on the show on House of Wellness a bit, but oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, like all of these things, just to feel grateful. And you can't think it. You can't just go, oh yeah, I'm grateful for my dog. I'm grateful for like to actually feel that has a profound effect on our chemistry. So the fact that that's so innate within you to be positive, I think that plays a huge part in the way and why you have such a wonderful life.
Well,
I really do.
Appreciate it a little more. I probably hadn't, fully focused on it, but
I'd
like to think I'm positive and grateful, and
you are.
I'm lucky.
And on that, you're really enjoyable to be around. No, that's a part of it. I think it creates an energetic exchange with the world and people in it that it's really nice to be in your company. You know what I mean? Like that's
I'll right
important.
back at you.
Oh, thanks, mate.
I'm going to hang out with you boys more often. This has been lovely.
Lucas, can you tell me some supplements that women can take without,
For the
mansplaining?
menopausal period.
For menopausal period, yeah.
Well, I mean, speaking of you mentioned before about the moodiness, somewhat, a bit more irritable, I guess, like short-tempered, that sort of stuff.
You said that delicately. Okay, I
love
wanted
it.
to
I'm being
straight up
polite about
murder
it.
people, but that's okay.
I'm glad you said it. I'm glad you finally said it. I fucking hated the world.
Look, there's a number of pretty versatile supplements that you can use during this period to at least somewhat offset the severity of the symptoms. Some of my favorite herbs that can be utilized during this period to help with, balancing the mood and helping with, just that nervous tension sort of feeling. A particular adaptogen it's very well known in Siberia and also in China called rhodiola. Have either of you heard about rhodiola?
But I'm just going to write it on my hand.
Rhodiola is considered to be like an adaptogen. So basically it's a herb that helps your body adapt to different forms of stresses. So that can be either like a physical stress or a mental stress. And what we got taught in naturopathy school, because I'm a naturopath, we got taught that we utilize these herbs during periods of severe stress or when the body is being challenged or just undergoing like an extreme stressor. Rhodiola is going to be excellent during that period, specifically because it actually helps to modulate some of these neurotransmitters that Josh mentioned, so serotonin and dopamine. And the good part about rhodiola is that you can just get it in a capsule format. So it's like around 300 to 500 milligrams per serving. And there's quite a lot of robust, there's a saying called pause menopause with rhodiola. And so they're really emphasizing the beneficial effects of rhodiola in terms of, modulating stress. It can help with reducing cortisol, which is that stress hormone. So I think the combination of rhodiola extract and then like a magnesium and then certain B vitamins that can help with like just sustaining energy can be like pretty versatile during that period.
Thank you for that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
For that.
So useful.
Yeah.
Guys, I want to just pose one final question before we pack up. You go for a walk in the park this afternoon, let's say. And as you get there, you see a figure walking towards you. And you notice that the figure is strangely familiar. Yeah. As you get closer, you realize the figure is actually you. Only the 80-year-old version of you. What's the one piece of advice they have for you?
Well, I'm just grateful she's still walking. Truly, like she's walking towards me in the park.
Yeah.
Go me.
Yeah. But what's her advice to you now?
Oh, her advice to me is just, I think, keep enjoying every day. Don't, the old cliche, don't sweat the small stuff, but truly just keep enjoying every day. Just have fun. Keep having fun. Yeah.
Mine would be to love yourself now instead of waiting. Because at least for me, there's a lot of parts that I love about myself, but then there are things behind the mask that I'm not so happy with.
What things?
Gee, you're getting pretty deep here.
Well, you're going to put that out there. I'm going to ask the question.
I would say probably the biggest. I think there's like an aspect to me where I feel like I can emotionally disconnect from people. And for me, I'm not proud of that. I know it serves me with my business and my brand and being hyper productive. Like you ask any of my friends and people, they're like, Lucas will get shit done. Like he'll complete 5 days of work in 1 day of work. So if I were to see the 80-year-old version of myself, I would say, stop wrestling against that and just sort of accept that, that's who you are and love all versions of yourself, because you can't always control exactly every different way that you can show up in the world. So I'd say to try and love yourself now. Stop trying to wait for this perfect moment of being, perfect in every area.
Thank you for opening up on that. And for the sage advice that you've given to yourself. Yeah, it's beautiful. Mel, Lucas, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
So
you.
appreciate it. Thank you for all your wisdom, all your shares, and just general great chats.
Well, thank you for what you're
Appreciate the
doing.
invite.